Gachagua by the National Assembly. 281 members of parliament voted in favor of the motion. That means they surpassed the 233 threshold set by the Constitution, which equates to 2/3 of the members of parliament. Now, 44 members of parliament voted no, whilst one just abstained from voting, either way for this particular impeachment motion. So I'd love to understand what the road ahead looks like for the deputy president, who now finds himself at a very precarious position on whether to, sit to the end, as he said he will fight to the end, or perhaps at what point does the resignation option now come in place? Because remember, once a public servant is impeached, he's not able to hold any public office in Kenya's, or in Kenya for that matter. And so, is this just about now, or is it about 2027? So these are some of the questions that we'd love to get answers for this morning. So in onset, I'm joined by David Mwangi, who's on my immediate right, yes. Who's a political commentator as well as a youth leader, and was the Nairobi Senator 2022 aspirant in the elections previously. Any minute from now, we'll be joined by Moses Kimanzi, who's a lawyer as well as a political analyst. Thank you very much, Mwangi, for your time this morning.
Anytime, Miss Cynthia.
Right, so before we get started, allow us to just listen into that particular vote as announced by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula.
Results of the division on the motion are as follows. Abstentions 1. The noes 44. The ayes 281. So the ayes have it. On the decision of the National Assembly, on the special motion on the proposed removal from office by impeachment of His Excellency Gachagua, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable members, as I had guided the House earlier in today's sitting, Article 145(2) of the Constitution sets a threshold of at least 2/3 of the members of the National Assembly to vote in support of a special motion for proposed removal by impeachment of the Deputy President of the Republic for the motion to be carried. According to the results of the division on the motion that I've just declared, a total of 281 members, being more than 2/3 of the members of the National Assembly, have voted in support of the motion. Article 145(2)(a) of the Constitution provides that, I quote, if a motion under Clause 1 is supported by at least 2/3 of all members of the National Assembly, the Speaker shall inform the Speaker of the Senate of the resolution within 2 days.
All right, so that was the final communication from the chair of that session, and that was Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula. Mwangi, you were obviously keenly following the proceedings that was happening at the National Assembly, which began at about 9 a.m. And they went on for about 12 hours, because at around 9:40 is when they were also concluding the session. What was your overview of what was happening at the National Assembly, putting in mind that we've never seen this kind of turnout, not even with the Finance Bill 2024.
Yes.
Right.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Mwangi. Thank you so much, Cynthia and Angela, for the invite here. We're here to talk about a few things about what's happening in the country. And let me go direct to what you asked.
Yeah.
Yesterday, if you noticed, there was let's say around 98 or 99% turnout of the members of parliament.
Right.
And it never just happens. And if it happens, two things must have happened. Either there was mobilization,
right,
or we are now having very good leaders who are very patriotic to our country. And I know all of you know the answer, which is the answer to that. So yesterday, everyone was in the bunge. Everyone was there trying to discuss and see what is the problem with our deputy president. And it was a very good motion. That's what I can say.
Right.
And it was run from 9. I watched it vigorously from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. to around 10 or 11 p.m. Yeah? And until the last when it was announced. And my biggest worry and my biggest problem even was how the MPs argue. That is what I learned. I took home, because let me say, according to me as a political commentator, the goose was already cooked. But
right from the start.
Yes, right from the start.
Was this just for the purposes of our records? Let it be on record that we actually went through.
That's why I said the goose was cooked already. Even in the public participations that we saw, they were one-sided. You would say, like, for example, in Bomas, only one side would lead the public participation, and whenever even the leaders who were there in front, there were no guys who were supporting the DP. So you would understand maybe it was one-sided. So also yesterday, I think it is a formality.
Right.
And unfortunately, I would say that the Parliament of Kenya sometimes ashames us and behaves like it's a rubber stamp. They only stamp on whatever they're told to do.
Right.
And if you hear about the allegations, I didn't hear any tangible evidence that we can talk about numbers.
Right.
I don't support the DP apparently. I don't support what he talks about. I don't support how he likes talking about Blima and making the conversation all about one area. I don't support that. But the arguments in the Bunge would have been different. In the Parliament would have been different. If it's about the money laundering, we should have figures. People should be coming up with figures. If it's about these speeches that he made, we should be told how these speeches have influenced Kenya.
Right.
We should be having members of Parliament who have so much information, so learned, and who can tell us a lot.
Right.
That is what I got.
Right. There was one thing that perhaps many Kenyans might have picked up from that particular session when the mover of the motion, Mwengi Mutuse, said, as long as you believe that there's a reason to impeach the deputy president, as long as you've got that belief, then that is a reason enough for you to vote for his impeachment. I mean, this coming from, one, the mover of the motion, from a member of parliament, with this kind of a special motion and the kind of grounds that you've put up against the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, what does that tell you?
That is also something I picked. You would say that if someone tells you, you just have to believe. Believe and vote. Believe. It's like the Bible. Believe and do this. You know, what you have to do is just append a signature here. We see that it makes people like, you tell people not to use their brain. You tell people not to use their reasoning and come up with a solution. Those are the challenges that we have in our country right now. And if you learn about the motion, I think the deputy speaker had spoken about it somewhere during the visits in the villages, or at home in Machakos apparently, and it was outside there. They already had known this guy will go home. So by the time they're coming to bring us the stories in the Bunge, it is already cooked. So that's why we didn't have an argumentative perspective whereby people would give their facts on the table. And now when you don't give facts on the table, this shows how our house is. It shows how we reason. It shows how we don't have facts about our people, what our people want. The public participation results from different organizations, TIFA and such. The results and the results that we saw yesterday, very big disparity.
Right.
I think TIFA was saying, I think 48% of Kenyans want the DP to go home, and then they were saying, I think around 38% want him to go home. That was a good bargain. If you look, that is a political process, and that's a good bargain. Right. But now whereby we see around 81 members saying yes and 44 saying no, definitely there has to be something.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. And my problem is not even with the DP. He'll go home probably, or maybe he'll go home if Senate puts a tick. We'll talk about that later, I'm very sure. Yeah. But I look at it when we are discussing other issues. Do we really go deep? Do we really understand what arguments we're supposed to bring to the parliament? Right. That is what I'm trying to argue about. I would hear someone saying, we had a youthful member who said that he's better, she's better, or he's better than the DP, and he or she should be replaced. Would do a better job. Yes, and I didn't understand where that comes from. Yeah. I didn't understand whereby we are not competing on who gets the DP. We are competing on how can we get a better Kenya? How can we get a better country? How can we have a country that is in unison and united? That's what I came, and that's what I learned.
Yeah, and prior to that, on Monday night, the deputy president held that press briefing, and to some extent, what he said during that press briefing was also used against him at the floor of the National Assembly. Was it right first for him to hold that press briefing just hours to that kind of session? And was that a big factor as well as to the numbers we saw and the yeses that were voted in favor of the motion? Okay.
Even if I was a DP, I would have done the same. Sometimes you'd want to legitimize and make sure that people understand where you come from. The presser that he made, I think that was a presser. That was not really an interview. That presser took 2.5 hours. I also watched it. Yeah. It took time from 7:20 to around 9. The DP was still speaking and trying to explain himself. Right. Whether he was right or whether he was wrong, whether he talked the right things or whether he talked the wrong things, we'll come to know in the future. We'll know. Eventually, the truth will come out. But the good part is he was able to talk to Kenyans and express himself stories to Kenyans and to the people that he called Mlima. You know, now that is now where he's been fixed. Right. And I don't have a problem with what he said. I don't have a problem with what he justified or what he didn't justify, because any other person would have talked. Because yesterday the process was too long. Not everyone would have watched, and I'm sure not everyone who is interested in the politics at that time. But he was able to explain to us, and now two things happened. Right. I don't understand sometimes. I think he knew his goose was cooked and he knew he was going, because he talked about three things. He talked about police abductions, he talked about the Adani deal, and he talked about something else. He talked about three things. Again, I'll remember the other one as we move on. And he talked about the right things that he's supposed to talk about when he's in power. For the first time, I heard him talk about development. For the first time, I heard him talk about Adani.
What do you mean for the first time?
Yeah, for the first time, he talked about. For the first time, he talked outside about development. For the first time, he talked outside about the Adani. He talked like a common mwananchi. He saw things the right way. He saw things from the eye and the angle that he's supposed to see. He never defended mediocrity. He said, these MPs should be dealing with the Adani stories. They should be dealing with these other stories. And exactly that is what we were talking about even the last time we were here. Right. And those are the priorities that we should be having. Mm-hmm. So for me, the address was okay. He did it right. The only problem that he did, he called the house. I don't know. He said some very
a house of absurdity.
A house of absurdity. Yeah. He used so mean. The words were so mean, and the MPs were so emotional about it. Even before he started yesterday, they were already on the roof and saying he should apologize. And apparently, do you know Simba? He didn't even apologize still. Yes. He did it. Yeah. Apparently, he went direct to the point and went on. So for me, I think he knew it's already done. Right. Yes.
Okay. Now let's speak about the charges that were instituted against the deputy president.
Yes.
Now, constitutionally, when you're in that process of removing a deputy president from office, especially through impeachment, you have to establish that there was gross misconduct, there was gross violation of the Constitution. You also have to establish that the hold of the office broke national and international laws. And, largely what has been instituted against him is on matters gross misconduct. From the evidence that was submitted by Mwengi Mutuse in terms of video clips of things that he said, screenshots, as well as emails of, how he acquired his property. Were those grounds enough for gross misconduct? Did he prove beyond any reasonable doubt?
I would say yes and no.
Yeah.
According to what the DP has been speaking, going around Mount Kenya, that is a gross misconduct. He's been saying that one tribe is superior than the other, which is not, and it's unfortunate for that. He's been saying some areas, some people have a larger shareholder. And the problem is not even him. The problem is the discussions that they had before even the elections, the agreements, the treaties that they signed. That is what he's been fighting for. Yes. So from the onset, we had a problem. But nobody will acknowledge that and agree that we had a problem. Right. We had already the divisive politics in us. That's why there were shareholders who decided this region should get this region should get this. So there was no equality, first of all. So from the onset, there was a problem. But since he pushed so hard, he looks like he's the one who came up with the inequality and the tribal card. But if we're honest to ourselves, that is what has been ailing us as a country, the tribal card. And even yesterday's voting, you'll notice still we had the tribal card. That's why we diverted so much. We didn't go so much deeply into the gross misconduct when it comes to the money, when it comes to the looting, when it comes to the real issues. We basically we were like cocooned in an area whereby only the DP, they were saying the DP has just been going to Central. He has just been doing going around in Central, but we didn't talk about the developments. I wish we would have said this guy takes only the resources, all the resources to Central. That would be a very different argument.
Right, but he defended and said he doesn't allocate resources. It's Parliament.
Yeah, he said it's about the MPs. Yeah. But now the MPs also are accusing him of being in Central and not advocating for other areas. So you see, there's that fight, and he was true. The MPs are the ones who do that. They're the ones who bargain, but they're affected by the same issue that he's being affected by, the tribalism issue.
All right, so at this point, allow me to introduce one more person on our set this morning, Moses Kimanzi, who's a lawyer and an analyst. Thank you very much, Moses. It's about time.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Yeah, karibu sana.
Asante.
Right,
and
now,
good morning.
Good morning. Being a legal mind on set, you know, obviously the votes met the threshold of what was required by the Constitution. 281 members of Parliament voted for it. You know, that's how much more? About 40, is it 47 more than what is required? 48 more than what is required by the Constitution.
Yes.
So what next? The Speaker said in about 2 days they'll communicate to the Senate. And so what does that process look like?
I think I'll start by saying we shouldn't be surprised by what happened yesterday. At around 9:18 p.m., the Deputy President stood impeached from Parliament.
Right.
And that kind of reduced his proverbial 9 lives
Right.
to now 2 lives.
Yeah.
His fate hangs in the balance this way. We stand to see what will happen in the Senate, and from the way things are looking, it's going to be headed to the courts. Now, when we started this discussion, I told you that it's a political process as well as a legal process. Now, what happened yesterday was purely the political part of it. So, as per your question, what is next?
Right.
He will wait now for his issue to be articulated in the Senate, and then based on whether he will get saved or not, he will decide whether he'll be going to court or not.
Right.
I think those are the only available options. We had earlier said he had an option of resignation to avoid impeachment, but he said he would be fighting on.
Right,
So-
but biologically speaking, is that still an option that is open?
No. He, well, yes, he could still resign at any point, but he said that he will
He
not
won't.
be resigning.
Yeah.
That is not an option that he will be considering, and therefore he fights on.
Right.
So let's wait and see what will happen.
Right.
Yes.
And then it's all about tyranny of numbers. It has been argued that Senate is more objective than the National Assembly.
Yes.
Is this about time that they can either, you know, prove that they're quite objective than the National Assembly or not, or is it still going to be a political process at the Senate?
Well, if it turns out to be a political process at the Senate, it will be quite unfortunate, because the framers of the Constitution, when it comes to issues impeachment,
Right.
consider the Senate to be an arbiter. It's an equivalent of a high court. So they will be making an impartial decision, or so is required of them. Now, how they have been handling previous impeachments of governors, we would not really say that they have been political. For me, the Senate stands a little bit more objective.
Right.
But we'll wait and see. You see, this is the first time
Yes.
that our deputy president is being impeached.
So we're testing our
we
institutions.
do not have a case study or a precedence to check.
Yeah.
So this is purely a first. So we stand to see how this will be executed. But again, how this will run,
Right.
there are 2 ways of looking at it. One way is that Parliament is not objective, and the other way is that Parliament was actually did its role. So depending on how the Senate behaves, if for instance the Senate saves the president, the deputy president, sorry, then the National Assembly will be at a very bad place.
Right.
Because Kenyans will have felt that they are purely propagating political interests at the expense of the country, which would be very unfortunate.
Right.
But if Senate upholds the decision of the National Assembly, then we can say that probably justice will have been seen to be served. But again, also the courts will have their say if the case escalates there, because now they will handle the legal aspect of it.
Right.
Yes.
Now, just for clarity, because there seems to be a lot of confusion amongst Kenyans on who exactly votes at the Senate. Is it just the elected senators, or nominated senators as well can vote?
All the senators are allowed to vote.
Yes.
But what will happen, I think if you followed yesterday, even the nominated senators, the nominated members of parliament
yeah.
voted. So what will happen is that first there will be a committee that will determine the merits of the case. And then if they find that the case should proceed, now that is when the actual thing will happen. Now the deputy president and his team will come.
Yeah.
They will push forward their case, and then they will look at the merits and the demerits, and a decision will be made through voting. Yes.
All right. Mwangi,
Yes.
listening to the deputy president sort of defend himself and the clips that he played at the National Assembly, perhaps for him indicating that, you know, what I'm speaking or what I have been speaking about is just similar to what the boss, President William Ruto, has been speaking. And members of parliament were quick to correct and say that was not an impeachment against the president, it was against the deputy president. And so was it right for him to play the clips that were, you know, that had President William Ruto in them?
When you're saving yourself, you try to do your best. So what you do, you compare yourself with the person who looks right. You know, in this scenario, the president is perceived to be right. The deputy president is perceived to be wrong. So the deputy president didn't want to separate them. He wanted them to act as if they were in all this together.
Right.
And in the public participation in some of the areas, we had people chanting Kufa Dereva Kufa Makanga. Also, someone chanted it yesterday in the bunge and said abiria wote watakufa dereva akikufa. But now he wants to put it, the deputy president, according to me, wanted to put it like they are together in this. And whatever he's been championing for is what the president has been supporting. But now, also the president has been very sharp on this. He has been very, very silent. I was telling one of my friends that this guy has been so silent on this issue, such that he acts like as if he's not part of it. He acts as if he's not in this world, and he's not even pushing, or he's not even defending his deputy. I don't really know why that happens, but as we said here, it's a political process. So we know what happens behind, but we're not certain, don't have evidence. So for him, he was so right. He tried to show the public and show them MPs who, for me, I think they were not sober-minded. He tried to show that the things that he's been pushing, if they're wrong, that shows also the president has been pushing for the same things. Right. But now where there's a problem is the president has not been in one area. He's been moving around the country. Where I have a problem with the deputy president is that he's been concentrating only on one area. And I think he thought it would give him more strength and more numbers at some point. And I don't know what politics he's playing, but I think we'll know as time goes by. Yeah. But him doing the videos was so right. And it shows that as per now, if he goes home, we will have a fight between him and the president. Right. Because now people will be like, if we were doing these things together, why was I secluded? I went home, you were left. Right. It will be a very, very funny turnout of events. We'll be waiting. I told you the other time, we had 1,000 days. Right now we have, I think, 970 days to the next election. Well, we have a long way. We have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. Right.
Indirectly, what was he saying? Because directly what he's saying is that I'm just speaking the same language as the boss, but indirectly, what was he saying?
He was just saying that the boss also has failed.
Moses, do you see it from the same point of view?
Yes, I would say I quite agree with him. what the Deputy President was trying to say was that we are in this boat together. And like I heard from a certain quarter yesterday where we were discussing quite a bit of what was happening.
Right.
And a friend of mine was asking me, we have a problem with a school. Which is the head teacher or the deputy? And you see, if you try to look at it like that, from the very onset, even when the Deputy President was making those utterances, the President was quiet. All right? So that also had a meaning, because if at any point he would have disagreed with what his deputy had said, or would say that is the position of him, and not the position of the government or the position of the Kenya Kwanza administration, then we would have seen the need for him to be secluded. But what I think is that the Deputy President made a very passionate appeal.
Yeah.
He explained himself and tried to reason with the National Assembly,
Right.
and tried to make Kenyans understand what was going on. And I want to believe that after he made his press briefer, if we would have had public participation after that, I think a lot of Kenyans would have had a change of heart. But given that, despite what he said, that Parliament went ahead and voted the way it did, it means that they had already made a decision. So whatever he said or didn't say wasn't going to going to change anything. Yes, and I think we can not give it to them 100% whether they are wrong or right. But for me, even in our last interview, I told you that those guys were not being objective, because if already they had given 291 signatures, the Speaker of the National Assembly had made certain utterances the previous weekend, and the Deputy Speaker had also.
Well, she said she was making the entrance as an MP, not as a speaker.
Listen,
or a deputy
you
speaker.
cannot you cannot separate yourself.
Right.
You cannot
From
separate
another
your
role.
role that you are. Of course, she is the Deputy Speaker, and at some point she sat at the Speaker's seat, but she also voted as an MP. So if you are wearing two shoes or you are wearing two hats, then it only befits that you protect each and every one of them. So whether she was for or against the impeachment, she shouldn't have said it.
Yeah.
You see, everyone has an opinion, including judges. But what makes judges objective?
Yeah.
They don't tell you.
Yes.
They make a decision. So you cannot say that this decision was based on ill will, was based on some bad blood between me and you. But you see, when you make certain utterances, it shows the public that you are not being fair. And I remember asking that question, having submitted 291 signatures, are these the same people who are supposed to give the Deputy President a fair hearing?
Yes.
You see, now we have hope in the Senate because there is no senator who has made a careless statement.
Yes.
Even the senators who are
Yes.
being brought to media houses to speak, they are still saying, we do not want something called in law sub judice. We don't want to talk about a matter that is coming to us. What I say will be used against me when we start debating.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they are just talking about the whole process without touching the merits or the demerits of it.
Of it.
Yes.
Now, this shareholding remarks seems to as well, there's not much clarity around it on what the Deputy President, okay, he says, you know, he didn't mean shareholding in terms of national resources or sharing national resources, but in terms of national positions, even went with the political parties or the coalition agreement they had as Kenya Kwanza to the National Assembly. But on the other hand, the MPs still insist this was not about national positions, it was about national resources. Looking at what the DP explained, Mwangi,
Yes.
And said, this is what I meant.
Yes.
Moses Wetangula got his part. Amason King is the Speaker of Senate, got his share. Musalia Mudavadi got his share. And for him to say that, and then members of parliament turn it around and say, that's not it. I mean, in this case, who's right, who's wrong?
First of all, the DP is right. The DP was among the principals and among the people who decided about and made the decisions in Kenya Kwanza. Before I divert, the only mistake that he did, he did not have a party. That is one of the worst mistakes he did. He came as an individual, as a single entity. I heard him speak the other day on TV, and I didn't understand him, and I thought he was better and more sharp politically. He said he trusted his partner like a Christian,
a gentleman's agreement.
A gentleman's agreement, and believed he would be handed.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand that point. Politically, nothing happens like that, because whatever he's going through right now, I will tell you point blank, if he had a party, things would be very different. But now whatever he's going through right now, he's going through it alone. He has no single party.
Right.
He has his friends.
No backup, basically.
No backup, basically.
Yeah.
He's not, he thinks he thought he owned UDA. UDA was not his party. And they welcomed him. It's like when you have a visitor. You welcome them, you don't make them sit on the visitor's chair, you take them straight to the bedroom. And now they think the house is theirs. So they are very comfortable. They sleep even for longer hours than you. They think the day you chase them away, they don't know the direction. They are wondering who will support me, where is where. That is the problem. And in any political alliances, any political people who come together, they need to have an agreement.
Yeah.
The agreement is always there. It is always in written most of the times. It is supposed to be in written. And with other parties, it was written. With PA, it was written.
Yeah.
With Chama cha Kazi, it was written. With all these other guys, with Mutua's party, it was written.
Yeah.
And they got their rightful shares. We want to shy off from it, but apparently politics is like a company. You have to know who you bring. What does he get? What does he bring to the table? Wetangula was told to bring I don't know how many votes. If he brings 70% of the votes they get, they still got the share even with all the 70%,
Right.
you see? And someone was giving a comparison between when they were not in power and when they were in power. And now they said they have their rightful 30%, that is the truth. And because what we had in the last election, most of the parties came together. Why? Because removing the incumbent, the government that was there was not an easy task. So people had to come together, gather up, make sure they have so many parties come together, so many small parties. And that's why the current president was going around everywhere. He was going to all the parties, signing agreements with them. I know some of them didn't get what they agreed, because also some of them didn't deliver. But now the DP went alone. And when he went alone, he got his DP, I think he negotiated for himself, and he got it right. But even if he negotiated for himself, his people still got something. But the only problem is his people and him have nothing in common. They have nothing that unites them.
Right.
So everyone fights for themselves. If you look at other parties like the Ford Kenya, Wetangula is okay. If you look at, it's called ANC, Musalia is okay. That is what he negotiated for.
Right.
You get what you negotiate for on the table.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Moses, Kimani Ichung'wah, the majority leader, was quick to turn that around and say, no, it was not about sharing the national positions, but it was about contribution of ideologies. And so essentially, what Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula got was 30% of ideologies. I mean, what is the region supposed to do with an ideology?
Well, let me first, before I get to Kimani Ichung'wah's remarks, let me give a rejoinder. I agree with him. You see, in a marriage, everyone brings something to the table. And in a political marriage, your strength is your party. And I agree with him. The only basic mistake that the deputy made was not to have a party. He rallied his people to vote for the president's party.
Right, UDA party.
UDA party. That was a political gain and a mistake at the same time.
Yes.
This is when he's realizing that that was a mistake. All through I've been telling you that the only utterances that the Deputy President has been seen to be making would be construed as political bad manners. And there are things that you shouldn't say to your partner, even though they seem to be right. All right? If, for instance, you're married, Cynthia,
Right.
and your spouse has a bad mouth odor, there is what not to say. All right? Because you will hurt his feelings. So now, that shareholding remark, I will equate it to that. The truth is that in politics, it is shareholding. What do you bring to the table,
Right.
and what do you get? And that is why if you have nothing to offer, believe you me, you will not be invited to that table. All right? So the Deputy President, after realizing his mistake, because there are several instances, he could have seen it coming. I don't want to preempt that this happened last week. This is something that had been planned
It's been
over,
brewing,
over a period of time.
Yeah,
If you could remember some time back when the president said that he would advocate for the next election, him having
A lady.
a female running mate.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Deputy President could have picked a cue from that.
Yeah.
All right? So with him and the Mrima thing, it's just that now appeals to him as his party, because that is what he brought to the table.
Mrima.
And that is why that Mrima thing was very special to his heart. All right?
Right.
If I take you back, and he should have used the same intelligence that the president used when he was deputy president. When the then deputy president, who is now the president, realized that he was going to be ousted from the Jubilee Party, he started making political arrangements for himself, quietly.
Yeah.
You know his famous remark, "Hii mambo ni kujipanga bwana."
Pole pole.
He knew that there was something coming, even though he did not see it openly. So he started making some preparations in advance. So even when the whole issue blew up, it did not catch him by surprise. Now, as opposed to that time, what has happened now has caught the deputy president by surprise.
Right.
Because he doesn't have a party to run to, and his people are amorphous. The Mrima thing, we can call it amorphous because we do not know whom those people owe their allegiance to. Of course, there are people from Mrima who voted him and who voted against him. But now, for him to have consolidated his backyard politically, he needed to have introduced a political party silently. Used some of his proxies to register the political party, and if now he's threatened politically, he also threatens to withdraw his people from the existing coalition and take them elsewhere. Now he has bargaining power. Right now, he doesn't have any. he's just a lonely orphan, if I can call him that, politically.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a place to run to. And even if he survives, though now the chances are a little bit slimmer than they were, if he survives, he will have a very hard time. Truth be told, the political marriage between Dr. William Ruto, His Excellency, and His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua is now beyond repair. You see, in court, there are grounds for divorce called irreconcilable differences. Now they have reached that point. It is in the public domain. Everyone can see that the two cannot work together. But was that a good reason for Parliament to be influenced to oust him that way? Well, that again depends on what the Senate and what the courts will decide. But I think that going forward, because as I've been saying, that deputy president seat is a jinxed seat. We should have learned it from the likes of the late Professor George Saitoti. And the only time that the then vice presidents didn't have a problem is during the reign of the former president, Mwai Kibaki.
Right.
Because right from his first vice president, who was the late Kijana Wamalwa, they had a good working relationship until he died. And because he had had a good relationship with the Western region, they came and told him, for the first time, we brought all our votes to you. Now that our son has gone, will you replace him with one of our own? And he brought in Moody Awori.
Uncle Moody.
Uncle Moody. Uncle Moody behaved himself.
Right.
And they went until they finished their term. And now, when they went into the 2007 election and whatever happened, happened. Now, for political survival, President Mwai Kibaki had to call Kalonzo Musyoka so that he could boost his numbers in the House. And again, as I was telling you the other time, in politics, not everything you think, not everything you know, not everything you want is supposed to come out of your mouth.
Right.
From where I sit, I do not think that the then president wanted Kalonzo Musyoka to be the next president. But he remained mum. He did not say it. He did not talk.
Yes.
They had a very good working relationship until their term ended. And then he said, I'm endorsing nobody. Everyone go to the ground, ask for votes. Whoever gets the seat has my blessings, and I will hand over power to him. Now you see, when you look at the current scenario, the presidential term limit is 2 terms.
Right.
And the deputy, having rised to that position, has a very good chance of becoming president one day. So we can say he has ambition. Therefore, there are things he can say, there are things he can do that will become a threat to his current boss.
Right.
And now that is where his advisors did not do a very good job.
Right.
Because they should have told him,
Yes.
Mzee, you don't say everything.
Yeah.
This one, stay with it. Stay with it in your heart. Let it be domiciled in your heart, but not, don't let it come out of your mouth. As for the shareholding remarks, I also agree with the deputy president, just that he shouldn't have said it the way he said it, because you see, he spilled a lot of beans. And that was quite unsettling for a lot of people. But if you look at those agreements, you will realize that everything he has been saying is the truth. Only that it shouldn't be said at a certain place in a certain way.
Yeah.
But the truth is, everyone comes and negotiates for his region. You could see the way ANC and Ford Kenya had negotiated for 1,000 kilometers of roads. They had negotiated for 30% of appointments. I mean, these are smart gentlemen.
I mean, Kingi negotiated for himself.
Kingi negotiated for himself, and he got what he wanted. So now, that is what politics is all about. And that is why you see, after the handshake between the former President Uhuru Kenyatta and Right Honorable, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, a lot of development went to Kisumu. I mean, you could see there was a lot of, because even him coming to the table, he has come with something. I will let you admit, and I will get this back. Yes. So there is nothing wrong with the president having wanted his Murima people to get his shares of whatever they had been promised. Remember, the only difference between him and the others was that the others had a written pact, but him, it was a gentleman's agreement. Again, a very risky way to do, even in the business circles.
To do business,
you cannot do business by word of mouth. I'm giving you this 1 million. I mean, it will drink water.
Right. Mwangi, I'll come to you now.
Okay.
With public participation,
yes,
the Honorable Millie Mabono Odhiambo, who's the minority whip now, was given that opportunity to give, results of the public participation that occurred on Friday and on Saturday, and she said 66% of Kenyans voted for the impeachment, or at least, voiced the opinion and wanted the deputy president to be sent home, and says over 200,000 Kenyans participated in the public participation, but still it remains a contentious ground, even for the deputy president himself, Rigathi Gachagua, who said, the public participation that was done was a shoddy exercise, did not meet the threshold. I mean, it is one thing to look at, you can genuinely feel some sense of dissatisfaction with the public participation that was done and the report that was tabled at the National Assembly.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to take it on the positive side. First of all, we've not had such a public participation ever in this country. And that is the first one that was televised. That was the first one that had too much politics in it. It was the first one that would have either people were mobilized or they were not mobilized, they were somewhere, they were doing something. Yeah. Personally, I was watching the Bombers of Kenya, the participation there.
Right.
And what I saw there, I didn't like it either way, but people were given a forum. And the problem when people are given a forum, I don't really know who should run the participation. I need to understand that, and I think I will ask Maila, he'll explain that to us also, who should run the public participation when it comes to government projects, when it comes to bunge issues, when it comes to such decisions. Because the same politicians who are voting and who are signing cannot be the ones who are running the public participation. I didn't understand that point. And it came to a point whereby when you were watching, you would see it had gone towards one side. The conversation was leaning towards one side. And already the influence of the members of parliament who are in the Bombers were already also leaning towards one side, meaning the people who are also them, the majority of them were not genuine and they were not legitimate.
Right.
But now it is a way that we've started, and I hope, and I wish the government would do it in all these things.
All bills and all motions.
Like now the Adani issue would have had such a forum where people are explained to, and people will give their voices freely. So we have to use the word freely, because now if we don't use the word freely, we'll have public participations, but now the problem, they'll be rubber stamping the decisions that have already been made. Yeah. So where I had a problem with the DP again, when these people also mobilized their people for the public participation, him himself, he was still, I didn't see him do anything about it. The MPs who are supporting him, the few MPs who are supporting him, during the public participation, they were nowhere to be found. They would have also done the public participation together with the others. So he left the show. He left the show for these other guys, for this other side who are against him. And now it was not working for him. But at least we would see some few sober-minded people who would reason out and who would give reasons. Because in politics, the best way to reason is avoid emotions. So most of these people who went there were emotional. Maybe some of them were mobilized. I'm not sure about that. Right. But according to their behavior, we'll see that they were mobilized. That's why they were beating the other guys like Morara. He was chased away from Bombers. So you would see that fight. But if we learn from these, we learn the mistakes that happened, we learn, and we are able to know who should run a public participation. Is it the political people? Is it the IBC? Which group exactly should run the public participation, so that we can have the rightful answers? So the answers that we had yesterday, I would say kind of they were true, but now what came out from the public participation, and Kenyans need to be taught how to deal with it. Kenyans were handling a different issue. Then they were saying, this bus should go home. Yeah. But now, that was not on the impeachment agenda. Yeah. That is not the agenda. You're having two questions, but you decide to bring your question and answer it. Yeah. That is what...
It's like a spoiled vote.
Yes, it's like a spoiled vote. Yeah. And I think civic education is very important when it comes to such issues, because now, what we were answering is not what you were asked. So even now, we had so much spoiled votes than the good votes.
Those that would say, we want both of them to vote.
Yes, it didn't count. That doesn't count, because it was not even part of the conversation. So that's why you'll see those who say the deputy president should go home, they would outweigh the others, because the reasons why the deputy president should go home are also attributed to why people thought the government of the day is not performing. Anyone who is bitter will say all of them should go home. And I'm so certain that the numbers that were picked by Parliament included even now the people who are saying everyone should go home.
Right.
That is the problem that we had. But we should be doing civic education in every part of this country, and public participation should come in handy, whereby people are more informed, whereby people can make their own independent decisions, and whereby people can air out their views.
Right.
Yes.
Moses, one can almost preempt that if this impeachment motion as well goes through the Senate and the Deputy President decides to go to the courts, the public participation will most definitely be one of the grounds that he will be challenging the decision on. And so what exactly meets the threshold of public participation? Because we also understand that there's a public participation bill of 2023 that is still in the making, is not yet discussed, it's not yet passed into a law or ascended into law. So what meets that threshold of public participation? And from Mwangi's point, that means those that actually went to the participation and said, we want both of them to go, it didn't actually count.
Yes, it didn't. And I agree with him. We do not have a public participation enacted bill yet. So with lack of a proper legislative framework, then now that is left to the courts to interpret. And I can tell you for a fact that will be a very strong ground in Deputy President's case if he decides to go to court.
Yeah.
You see, one, the public participation that we witnessed was not a well thought, fair deal to the issue. It was just as shambolic and as frivolous and as biased as the motion that was passed in Parliament itself. You see, when you read Articles 147 read together with 149 and 150, it talks about, one, the functions of the president. It talks about the grounds for impeaching a deputy president.
Yes.
And talks about the process. It talks about how the office of a deputy president can be vacant, what leads to that, and what are the grounds that should be considered for impeaching a sitting deputy president.
Yes.
And now, what should have happened is that we should have first had civic education. And I think now we leave it to Parliament to legislate, one, regarding timeline. Because you cannot table a motion to Parliament of impeachment, and within a week it has been voted on, public participation has been done, it has been discussed, and a vote has been taken.
Yeah.
That timeline is very short. If you want fair results, then it means there should be civic education. There are people who do not know what are the functions of a deputy president. They should be taught. After they are taught, then the allegations that have been made against the deputy president ought to have been read in those public participation forums by neutral parties. From where I sit, that should be the work of the IEBC. But it should be done in law. And that's why, even if we were to have a referendum today, it is still the IEBC that would hold the referendum. You remember when we had the orange and the banana 2005 referendum? Nobody questioned it because it was done above board. But what this process has done, it has not been above board. We needed a neutral arbiter who would give equal hearing to both the proponents and the antagonists of the motion, so that those who are against can be heard. Those who are for can be heard. And then after the public is well informed, now they can give their views. The views that the public was giving was the disappointment in the government.
In the regime, yeah.
And they were saying all of them should go. It is not even the driver and the makanga. They were including the mechanic and the town boy. You see, they were simply saying everyone should go with the bus. All right? And that was the view of Kenyans. But if you listen to Kenyans keenly, they will tell you that the problems that they have as Kenyans, the problems we have as a country, will not be solved by us impeaching the deputy president.
Yeah.
And therefore, if that part was heard,
right,
then we would have had an objective public participation. So, from where I sit, yes, public participation happened, and we appreciate that fact. And in fact, on all legislative policies, on matters affecting wananchi.
Right, this should be the way to go.
That should be the way to go. I wish they come, use the same resources, use the same energy, use the same time to make us discuss the Adani issue, to make us discuss the share deal.
Yes.
You'll be surprised. Kenyans will give their opinions. And I'm surprised that in less than 4 months, the same parliament passed the contentious and the outrageous finance bill. And they saw the onslaught of the public after that, having voted in very large numbers. And if the Senate disagrees with the decision of the National Assembly, I think the president will have to reconsider to dissolve parliament, because Kenyans will have lost their confidence in parliament. You cannot be having numbers like, it's like Kenyans asking, are these the only brains we have? Or kuna brains ingine waliacha home watatumia next time, you know? That kind of thing. Like, you are so persuaded, you are so convinced about something that is wrong.
Right.
And then we need what we call, parliament should be very independent, and by independent it should even include their thinking. I mean, for something, I do not think you can put 10 people together and you find that they are reasoning the same.
Right.
If the vote differed like in 100 and something versus 100, I would have said that was a comprehensive debate.
And a sober debate.
And a sober debate. But it cannot be like all of us, we are headed the same direction. That means there was either an influence or it was just a process to finish off the political witch hunt against the deputy president, as most Kenyans are seeing.
Right. And truth to the word that you said, because I was listening to the proceedings as well, and there were female members of parliament, who picked up on something that, it was not substantiated. There was no proof on it. I didn't hear the member of parliament, who moved the motion, Mwingi Mutuse, talk about it and point to an evidence of whether or not he made those kind of remarks, which brings to the point that you've said. However, let's talk about now the ripple effects of this kind of particular decision made by the National Assembly on institutions, key institutions in the country, like the legislature itself, as well as the judiciary, because one way or the other, they will get involved in this process. The deputy president has filed, about more than 12, at least 12, petitions at the floor of the corridors of court, just trying to stop this process, but judiciary didn't do it. But what is the ripple effect of this kind of decision made by the National Assembly on key institutions, and what precedents does it set for the future in Kenya?
I will start by saying it might set a bad precedent, or it might set a good one, or it might not affect anything at all. First of all, right now, the judiciary and the executive in this country are not so much in good terms. You'll find that today, the Chief Justice is talking about how funding of schools should happen, and all the bursaries should be collected and put in one fund, as we were debating the other time and saying. But she is, I think, the third in command, or we can say that is third in command. She has the powers to move such suggestions to the president. But why come out to the public, tell us about that? We cannot do anything about it, apparently. So you will know that if such utterances are made on the streets, you will know that there's no good communication between the executive or the presidency, let me say that, and the judiciary, the high-ranking judiciary. Yeah? And now, those are the challenges sometimes that we have. You will find that also the Gachagua on his end, the utterances he made to NIS, you'll see that he mentioned them on the streets, he discredited them totally. In fact, someone was saying he destroyed them. He destroyed them. He woke up and made a whole press conference for the NIS. Yeah. So he has no faith in them. So if you see that, if you see the top organs in government, the top organs in a country whereby they have no faith in each other, it becomes so hard to work together. And you find that most of them now will not be transparent. You'll find that we'll have now people having personal vendettas, and they're able to push it depending on the highest bidder. But now you will, if Gachagua decides to go the court way, I think he will go, which he has started already going, and they listen to him. It will give us a right way to see whereby are they also objective, or are they also influenced. Those are some of the issues. We are yet far to that point, but I think by next week we'll have known. And we'll be able to know whether the judiciary is independent. And if it is independent, it will be a very good ideology, it will be a very good place for Kenya, because now they will survive. Whenever you have a judiciary which is not independent, and you have it influenced by the political temperatures or by the political conditions of the country, things don't work. That's why you can see right now, judges here have been paid 126 million. Uhuru did that out of anger. He did that out of emotion. He decided not to ascend them to the higher rankings. But now you see who gets slapped. It is the Kenyan taxpayer who pays the 126 million. Who gets slapped? It is the Kenyan Mama Mboga, which we were talking about, and we can see he or she's not part of the government, but they get slapped. So we'll see whereby if Gachagua takes it to High Court, or takes it, I don't know to what court he'll take it. From there, what happens? And then, are they able to substantiate all the, I think he had around 10 or 12 issues that 11 issues that they were pointing. If they're able to take them down one by one, you know, the issue is breaking them one by one and saying, is this right, is this wrong? The only problem also I had with the parliament is all these issues, for them, they say they were yes. I don't understand how 11 issues can be all true. They would have said this one, remove it, but now we remain with around 8. Let us deal with these ones. Because there's no way that the move of the motion was so accurate, and he knew the charges, all of them, and they were so accurate.
He had such a big smile.
Yes, he had. That's the whole point. It's either the 11 or less, they would have added another 3 and told us, in fact, we want to add another 3 and tell this guy he must go home. Or they would have told us these 8 are okay, these 3 are not okay. That is how the argument would have gone. But on the relationship of the institutions in this country, we will know as we head to the High Court.
Right.
Yes.
You know, earlier on, Moses said this particular seat is cast. And so for whoever will be hoping to be a deputy president in Kenya, what are some of the lessons to pick from the woes that are facing the deputy?
First of all, I don't know whether we'll have a deputy president. I think that is a subject to be discussed. I don't know whether the president has the powers to appoint a deputy president according to the constitution. Right. And
yes, he has.
And if he has, that is a very bad loophole in the constitution of the country, because how does he have the powers to appoint a deputy president from anywhere else, and yet they were not elected in the same ticket? And if he will appoint a deputy president, it will also bring another issue of the politics. Will he get a person from Mount Kenya? Will he get a person from the Western? Will he get a person from the coast areas? I don't really know. But now that is very political, because also I know he's looking at the 2027. On the microphone, he said he doesn't look at that, but I'll tell you point blank, he's looking at that because he has to know what really happens. And also the factor of Baba getting the AU seat. Those are some of the political steps. We will talk about them the next time, because now that is also another story that will come here, whereby if the deputy goes home and Baba loses the AU seat, we are having now a very different problem, whereby we have two, let me say, we have 2 senior men, jobless and idle. He will run for his money. At least they will keep the country check, but I don't know what will happen. Yeah, so those are some of the issues. Let me go back to where we were. So if he picks a deputy president. For the deputy president, you have no much that you can do without having a good relationship with the president. If you're not in a good relationship with the president, you cannot work. Because as according to the constitution, nearly all the roles they're said to assist. You know, when you're told
principal assistant,
it's assist, if you are assisting someone, he has to be accepted to be assisted, and he has to be ready to give you the roles. That's why you found when Uhuru fell out with the current president Ruto felt he was out, he was segregated, because at some point they said even Uhuru was not talking to him. So how do you work in such a condition? And right now, as we were sitting here, I was thinking, is the current deputy right now, regarding Gachagua, talking with the president? I was just asking myself right now. Right. Is he being given functions? And from when? Since when did they fall out? For how long have we been having this vacuum whereby the vice president has been we can say dysfunctional? Because if they're not working together, if they're not communicating, that is very dysfunctional. Right. For how long have we been having this? And then also, for how long shall we be having this? Right. Because those are the questions that you should be asking.
Right. Moses, now that the National Assembly has impeached the deputy president, so he stands impeached by the National Assembly, yes. Where does this leave him in terms of operations in government? Does he still attend Security Council meetings? If there's any cabinet meeting, does he attend? Where does it leave him?
He's still the deputy president.
Right.
Even today morning.
He woke up, the deputy president.
Up, and I can tell you that he's seated at the deputy president's office. And he's enjoying every privilege of a deputy president. Now, let me answer it this way so that you can understand.
Yes.
When you elect a new president, he's called president-elect.
Yeah.
Pending any dissatisfaction from the opposing camp, them going to court, the court making their pronouncement on the matter, and then now he's sworn in.
Right.
All right? So he stands impeached by Parliament,
yes.
But he's still the deputy president until he goes to the Senate. The Senate accords him a fair hearing, and the Senate either upholds or quashes that impeachment. Now, at that point,
right.
He will have been impeached, right? But he will still have one more redress point.
The court.
Which is the court. Now, if he goes to court and the court agrees with the impeachment, now he will vacate office. So at that point, he will have vacated office. But right now, we cannot even call him the former deputy president. We are not there yet.
He's still the DP.
He's still the DP. And I'm very convinced. I listened the whole of yesterday to the debate in Parliament, and I did not get even one out of the 11 grounds. I did not get even one ground that can stand the constitutional requirement of evidence in court and pass.
That's huge, coming from a lawyer.
Yes. If they go to court, this whole thing will take a different turn. I can tell you that for a fact. Most of what you were hearing yesterday were just rumors, hearsays, all right? And you see, the threshold of evidence is very high, all right?
Right.
It is not like coming and saying, I saw Cynthia. Who else was there with you? Your word is not enough. It has to be corroborated, all right? So, if you listen to that, and that's why I was even shocked that they passed all the 11 grounds and they voted for them. That was a biased way of doing it. Right. I mean, even from where you sit, even without much legal knowledge, if you are sitting in Parliament, there's something you would have looked at it and said, this one, let's leave it. All right?
Yes.
But now, when it goes to the Senate, And I believe that Senate will be more objective. Then they should be able to articulate issue by issue. All right?
Yeah.
And even if they uphold the impeachment, the court will still have the final say. Now that will be a battle of the titans again, because we've seen in the past when judiciary makes a certain decision and then you see the same people who approve their budget at the National Assembly. So we could now see another battle of the titans, which is again what Mwangi was saying. We should strengthen institutions. I think we should have a relook at how we drafted this constitution. He asked if the president has the powers to appoint. Yes, if the president, if the deputy president gets impeached, he has to within 14 days appoint another deputy president who will be vetted in parliament. When you look at
the same parliament.
When you look at the process, then you wonder, where did we get this wrong? Because one, I have a problem with parliament giving budgets to both executive and the judiciary.
Yes.
That is something we should have a look at, because that is where we usually have room and space for manipulation and deals, what we call cutting deals in quotes. Now, you want this?
Give us this.
Give us this. And that will be very problematic. And that's why you see, even if you followed most impeachments of governors, they were not on very substantiated grounds. If you are honest with yourself, you will hear the MCAs requested for a trip somewhere and the governor refused. The MCAs asked for a certain allowance and the governor refused. And from there, they got what we call bad blood. Now, when bad blood exists, it is so bad that you can buy a car today from the showroom and a policeman raises his hand on the road. If he wants to find a mistake on a new 0 mileage car, he will find a mistake.
Yes, that is bad blood.
That is now what we call bad blood. Now, when that bad blood comes into question, there is nothing good you will see about this person, and you will look for anything bad. And trust me, it will be
one
found.
way or the other, it will
One way or the other, it will be found. So we need also to have a relook at this thing we called impeaching, and by who and for what reason. Has it been used the way the framers of the Constitution would have wanted it? Or are we having a play day for some people to just exercise their authority? And they tell you, no, we have powers to kick you out, and we can actually do that. So we will need to have those things in question relooked at, because no constitution is complete. It is progressive, and that's why it's just a guideline. Even on the issue of public participation, the Constitution says that Parliament should enact a law, should pass a legislation that gives the actual framework of how that is to be done. Do you know, even this impeachment process doesn't have an exact legal framework? It doesn't. And that's why up to now, it has been a totally political process.
Yes.
So when we get to the legal aspect of it, you will get shocked. So now, we should have a place in the Constitution where we either give more weight to the political aspect of it or to the legal aspect of it.
Right. So, gentlemen, I want us to wrap this conversation up. So I'll give you an opportunity to give your final words, but you can answer that as well, as because what the Deputy President will need is 23 senators for him to be saved at the Senate. So what does the next few days look like for him? Will there be a lot of mobilization, perhaps just trying to appeal now, because it's done and dusted at the National Assembly, so now all eyes shift to the Senate. So how does the next few days look like for him, Mwangi?
First of all, I'd like to wish him the best for the next few days. If you said, he had 9 lives, right now he has 2 lives, at most 3 lives. But now, I don't think mobilization will have an impact. For me, I love Senate. Senate is so sober-minded, according to me. Senators are able to read and they're able to understand content. If you see, most senators are lawyers, apparently, and most senators have gone through a process.
Right.
If you look at the leadership of this country, senators give more sober-minded decisions. Senators give more leeway, and they're able to understand. They're not swayed. I don't know the system of senators, or why they're not swayed by the political side. They don't even look like politicians, apparently. And even if you see the bills that they bring into the Senate, very sober-minded. So I know they'll give him the right hearing. I'll be ready to listen to that. And after the committee, we'll be able to know whether they will go to the voting or the committee also. I think also the committee has its own way of doing. They can also recommend at the committee level instead of going to the voters. Right, but now we'll be waiting for that. That's why I said he has 3 lives. And I know he cannot compete. The forces right now are so hard. And if it comes to money, it comes to mobilization, he may not have options, because back there right now it's a bit stiff. And those people who want him out, they are so powerful. Because if we see the voting, if the voting was like this, 281 to 44, if we go to the political parties and you go to the systems that this country has formed, whereby we elect according to regions, he will go home. But now he will just take his case, take his papers, let the senators go through them, and I wish that they will make the sober decision. And the decision that senators will make this time will show how, if Kenyans we are ready for change. It will show if Kenyans we are ready for better leadership. It will show if Kenyans are ready to change their ways and forget about the tribal, the cocoons that we have been living in, and it will show whether we are ready for equality in the future. That's all I can say.
Right.
Yes.
Moses, just 23 senators sounds like a small number, but it'll be such a very key number for him that if he can just get 23, then he's got a lifeline. Now, will he get it?
Yes and no. Yes, because senators are quite more objective. And Kenyans will be very keen to watch what will be happening in the Senate. Now, as he has said, when it comes to objectivity, when it comes to political persuasions, that doesn't very much appeal to senators. I could even not be surprised if this issue doesn't go beyond the committee stage. Because if the committee that will be selected looks at the grounds and says they do not meet the threshold, then it will not go to voting. He will have been saved like that. Again, if it goes to voting,
right,
I believe this will be independent-minded people. So he has a chance of getting the 23 senators, and that's why I've said yes. And no, because mobilization will not be a factor at this point. Right?
Right.
So he will just like he opted to fight on, he will just wait and see what will happen to him. He will be as, I don't know whether you've seen those governors who have gone to the Senate,
right,
to answer to the charges. He will be as helpless as that. But at the end of the day, the Senate will make a decision. How we pray that they give Kenyans the lifeline that they are looking for, the hope that at least we can trust one institution to do the right thing. I will also wish him all the best. It is a bad place to find yourself or to be at this time. And even if he was to go home, I would not envy the person who would be appointed the next deputy president. That is another person who would be in a very awkward position also.
Perhaps even worse.
Worse than the current one. So everything is a matter of watch and wait. As you've said, it's already done and dusted at the Parliament, at the National Assembly, and now we are waiting for the Senate to make that big decision. So the next few weeks will shape a lot in this country.
Right.
And when you look at the political part of it, both situations don't look good. If the deputy president goes home, and as he has said, by a very small chance or a big chance, then the AU seat is lost, and the former prime minister comes back to the political scene, then this will be two powerful men who are idle and have ambition for 2027 and will make noise. Okay, per se, if the deputy president is impeached, he ceases to hold public office. I think we discussed that. But if he survives, again, he might.
That's a different.
That's a different ball game altogether. It will have changed the dynamics of the politics in this country. Again, if he goes home, the ODM party, which is the party that recently formed an alliance with the president, will be wanting the president to pick a deputy from their region.
Wow.
Whether he does that or not, again, the whole 2027 matrix, political matrix changes entirely. That's why I told you the last time we had a debate here that the people I pray for every day, one is the president. You do not want to be in his position because what he does or fails to do has a lot of implications going forward. And there are some mistakes that are very costly in politics that you never get a chance to have a comeback. That's the worst part of it.
Right.
Now, we stand and to just wait and see what will happen to a lot of issues. But what I would urge every Kenyan is let's remain peaceful. Let's give the rightful institutions that are handling this process to do that, as we are patient and calm, and let's hope that all turns well.
Right.
Because if it doesn't, I don't know where we are headed.
I'll bring you guys back here so that you can tell me what happens. So allow me to wrap it up at that point, gentlemen.
Okay.
Thank you very much. On my immediate right, David Mwangi, Nairobi aspirant senatorial seat in 2022 elections, as well as a political commentator and youth leader. And just next to him is Moses Kimanzi, who's a lawyer and a political analyst as well. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time this morning. So, of course, the conversation continues across various platforms on what next for the deputy president. We await to see the communication that will be done to the Senate, and what timeless the Senate Speaker Mason Kingi will now be able to set. By the way, there's also a different impeachment that is taking place at the Senate. That is for Kericho County Governor. That is Eric Mutai. So Senate is going to be quite busy for the next couple of weeks, so we'll be waiting to see on these two cases what happens. The former, the governor for Kericho County, that is Eric Mutai, as well as the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, Rigathi Gachagua. So allow me to put a full stop to that at this point. Thank you for watching. In case you've missed this broadcast, you can rewatch it across our social media platforms, that is on EBN TV. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. Have yourself a blessed morning.